Salute, salute, salute to the eternal, indigenous, spiritual, most high. Trolls only God or your mama can love you. And last but not least, one time, yeah. In remembrance of my brother from another mother, Jimmy McNair, better known as Beaver, to those who knew him personally. Fly high, bro. Miss you and love you every damn day. And as you would say if you were still among us, here we go, here we go. Where's me go? I needs me shouldn't, so I control. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot going on in this country, and there's been a lot that people have tried to brush under the rug, didn't want us to notice. They'll even say things to antagonize you and patronize you, like stop playing victim when you really are the victim. So I want to start bringing attention and awareness to the indigenous people, you know, of society, people who look like me. We seem to always be on the receiving end of these targets, so to speak. We're not supposed to say the L word, but these Lynchins, okay, these lynchings that's going on across the country is no mistake. It's a grand design. And the same way it's happening now, and the same way it's handled now, is how it always has happened. It's just, it's the YT American way. So, y'all know me, I'm always doing research and doing documentaries, and I ran across some occurrences, man, some things that really bothered me, but, you know, in listening to these documentaries, I realized, man, this has been going on for quite a long time. And this has been handled like this for quite a long time. And nothing seems to change, you know? So,
From Grandpa to Emmett to Trayvon, the trajectory of lynching history has shifted
this is the Anthony Crawford story. The Anthony Crawford story.
over time in America. I am the great great granddaughter of Anthony Crawford, who was lynched October 21st, 1916. And my aunt's home, which was where we had our Thanksgiving dinners and Christmases, she owned the largest photograph of him in a permanent space over the dinner table. And they always pointed to him and said, walk with a sense of pride, because Grandpa Crawford stuck up for his rights to the time of his death. As a child, when we were told the story of Grandpa Crawford, he's like a king almost. We were told that he was born enslaved and had worked his way up to owning property and was wealthy. He started a school for the black children in Abbeville. He was the president of the Black Masons of South Carolina. And at the time of his death, Grandpa Crawford owned 427 acres of prime cotton land. So,
Money
one day
Mike, what's good,
in
brother? What's good, Money
1916, it's a
Mike?
Saturday morning, Grandpa Crawford went to town to sell cotton seed, and they offered him 85 cents per.
Money Mike, glad to have you with me, brother. Um, you know me, my mind is always on what's going on. And I want to look a little further. I want to look a little further into these lynchings. I already knew the history, but I wanted to see how they were handled. And I wanted to see who were involved so that I can compare it to what we see today with who's involved, who's being informed, and what's being done about it. And you'd be surprised. These things, how you doing? How you doing? What's good? You'd be surprised. The same way and the same people who were involved even in the early 1900s are the same people that's involved now. And these things are ending the same way. And if you are indigenous in America, if you are FBA, you really might want to start taking this serious because it's never stopped in this country. It's never stopped. I tell y'all all the time, Jim Crow never ended. It's just the racist policies are no longer legal. Doesn't mean that Jim Crow ways ended. It means that the racist policies are no longer legal. So we really need to be more vigilant in watching our backs, and we need to be more vigilant in doing the research and understanding the history of these things when they take place. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've got some statistics for you tonight. You know what I mean? And I've got a couple documentaries for us to pay attention to. This is the Anthony Crawford story, and pay attention to how long these things have been going on. Let's pay attention to how long these things have been going on.
Unit that was worth more. He said, "Give me my damn cottonseed back," and was arrested for cursing a white man. Word had gotten around town that Anthony Crawford had started acting uppity. And so about 400 people gathered, taking Grandpa out of the jail. They stabbed him, beat him, tied him to the back of the buggy, and drug that around town to the county fairgrounds. They hung him there and riddled his body with 200 bullets. The last thing he said was, "I thought I was a good citizen and give my bank book to my children." The family tried to retrieve the body and were told to leave it there. So you can imagine your grandfather being at home eating breakfast with the children, laughing. And then all of a sudden he's hanging from a tree with 200 bullets in him. That's a form of terrorism. And then there was an ad taken in the newspaper by white citizens. And they said that the Crawford family needed to leave the state of South Carolina, otherwise everybody's life was in danger. My great uncle, Walter, Grandpa's oldest son, wrote Governor Richard I. Manning and asked him for protection. Governor Manning wrote back and said while he deplored the lynching, he could not guarantee our safety. So my family didn't leave the South. They were chased away from the South. We moved to Evanston, Illinois, and not only did the Crawfords leave, but half of the black population of Abbeville was gone within the next 10 years. I haven't spent a lot of time in the South. The first time I went to Abbeville was the first time I could understand what 427 acres looks like. And that's when I think I got really offended. That's the day I became an activist. I came home and I started writing congressmen, and I'm saying, do you know that our family was kicked off this property for this? These are unsolved murders. And people who benefited from lynchings, their families are still alive, and they're still benefiting financial rewards from the land of our ancestors. And that just seems a shame.
How? Nothing but truth, man. Nothing but truth. And how are we supposed to deal with this day by day? Knowing that we're the victims of this, knowing that there's land stolen, there's stories not being told, there's history being reframed and rewritten, there's resources being taken, there's oppression still plaguing this country that no one wants to talk about, that no one wants to be accountable for, but yet they all want the proceeds of lynching, the benefit of lynching, the benefit of rewriting history, paper genocide, reclassifying people, lying about people's, you know, their ethnic heritage. At what point, ladies and gentlemen, do we call a spade, indigenous people? At what point do we actually unite? At what point do we actually come together, do the research, come together? We've got to stop this. This has been going on forever and a day, and it's not going to stop. You need to understand that your grandbabies will be witnesses to hostile acts of violence like this. Your great grandbabies will be witnesses of these hostile acts. These lynchings, y'all. YouTube is always telling us what we can't say, but I mean, I want to make sure the message is clear. Some things you don't do for the money. So if this don't get monetized, oh well. As long as the message gets out to the people. As long as the message gets out. Ladies and gentlemen, lynching is no accident. It's no mistake. It is a way of life for some people, okay, in this country. Does it take a rocket scientist to figure out who? It is a way of life. It's a heritage for them. It's a culture. It's a hobby. It's a sickness. It's an illness. It's who they are. When you see the total numbers, when I give you the total numbers of how many times this has occurred and how many times it's been labeled the S word, self-inflicted, SUICIDE, y'all know, it's astonishing. And if it doesn't hit home, if you don't love you enough, love your parents enough, love your kids enough, love your neighbors enough, then they're going to continue to get away with these hostile acts of violence, y'all. And they're going to continue to tell you to stop playing victim when we have been pretty much the only targets of their victimhood. So at some point, we've got to make a stand. This is why we had Black Panthers. You know, we've got to make a stand. Let's get back into this. We're going to back it up here.
And people who benefited from lynchings, their families are still alive, and they're still benefiting financial rewards from the land of our ancestors. And that just seems a shame. So, from Grandpa to Emmett to Trayvon, the trajectory of lynching history has shifted over time in America. Because when Grandpa was killed in 1916, there was no charges brought and no trial. In 1955, Emmett Till's murder, there was a trial but no convictions. And then Trayvon Martin, now you have a trial and a not guilty verdict. So all the time you have dead Black bodies, and nobody's ever convicted for the murders. On the 100th anniversary of Grandpa Crawford's lynching, we went back to Abbeville. Over 200 family members came from all over the United States to help unveil the marker dedicated to Grandpa Crawford's lynching. And I remember Grandpa's granddaughter, one of the only living grandchildren, was next to me in a wheelchair. And when we took the cover off of the marker, she looked at the picture of him. I saw her face light up, and I heard her say, my. And to watch her.
We are covering the lynching of Anthony Crawford. All right? The Willie lynching of Anthony Crawford.
Enjoy that moment. That meant the world to me. So the marker being in Abbeville is important because the story has been denied for so long. But now, if you go to Abbeville City Hall to do business, you have to walk right past Anthony Crawford to do it. You can't bypass him anymore.
Help share the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Help share the truth. Again, these are all things that we need to be more aware of because it's been going on, it's still going on. Now, we're talking about the early 1900s right now. This is 2026 and we could bring up cases. 2025, we could bring up cases. 2024, we could bring up cases. 2023, I can keep going and you can find the cases. You can find the cases of these Willie lynchings taking place in this country still right now to this day. Even though the racist policies are no longer legal, is no longer law, the racist acts are still being practiced. And the investigations are still being handled the same way. Y'all really don't think law enforcement is in on this? Y'all really don't think law enforcement is running around with Proud Boys and KKK? You don't think these mayors and these governors are running around, these sheriffs, these DAs, these medical examiners, you don't think they're running around with the same groups? They look just like them. Who do you think they're gonna side with and for? It's okay for you to be thrown in jail. It's okay for you to be the institutional slave. It's okay for you to wear the oppression. It's okay for you to wear the poverty. It's okay for you to wear the misblame. It's okay for you to wear the judgment. It's okay for you to never get justice. But it's never okay for them in their eyes. It's never okay for them in their eyes. They are them, and you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. We really need to start drawing more attention to this. I can understand how we got away from it because there's been so many things that's distracted us. And I think that's when these type of hostile acts of violence begin to happen. You know, when we're stuck on what Donald Trump is doing and stupid wars with other countries and, you know, police brutality and everything else, these acts take place and we don't notice. And we should. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pushing through this live because truthfully, I am tired. I'm tired. Y'all know I got me a little gig at night now, so I don't have to come on here and depend on YouTube money and beg for support and all of that, you know. So I pour a lot more time into my night gig than YouTube, but I can't forget about the family. All right. So it's amazing how these things were called self-inflicted then, and they're still self-inflicted now. So law enforcement of yesterday is still law enforcement of today, which in turn tells me that that community of people of yesterday are still the same community of people today who would pull off these nefarious, egregious, random acts of violence upon other people and never ever think to render justice and never ever feel bad about not rendering justice. These people are able to sleep at night consciously with this demonic deviancy upon them. Upon them. They're barbarians. They're barbarians. Every time we hear these stories, we're thinking of people right now. We're thinking of families right now. Do you understand there's still families living right now from the 1950s and the 1960s who are still going through this, who never got justice, and every time they hear about these stories taking place today, they're reminded of what they went through, and their stories have somehow gotten lost, but they're still reminded of the trauma every time these stories break the news. Do we understand that? Do you understand the trauma we have to pass down in our community? because of these type of acts? Do you understand the pressure? Do you understand the anger? Do you understand the prejudice that develops behind this? These are questions that I really need answers to. You know, these are questions that I really need answers to. Because pressure can even, it can either build a diamond or pressure can bust a pipe. And I would much rather pressure build diamonds, but at this point in today's society, and knowing the history of this country, and knowing that we're always the victims of such hostile acts, you know, I think it's leaning more to busting pipes, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hit the like button. We got to get this word out, family. We got to get this word out, family. I don't want to beg anyone to hit the like button tonight. If y'all can't see the importance of this, being black people or good white folks, you know, it is what it is. But we've got to get the word out. We've got to get the word out. All right. So now we're going into the lynching documentary of Wes Johnson. So this is the Wes Johnson story. We've just got done listening to the story of Anthony Crawford. Now this is the story of Wes Johnson. In doing this research, y'all have no idea how many of these stories came up. The same way you have hundreds of stories about the voting massacres that took place, hundreds of stories of different wars and, you know, different Indian tribes and different people who were erased and reclassified. Man, do y'all know that there are endless amounts of these stories on lynchings, y'all? Lynchings. Y'all, you have no idea how many documentaries it is online on lynchings alone, black people. Alone. I don't know how we ain't never paid this no more attention. I don't know how this ain't made the front line, you know what I'm saying, the front page of the news in the black community. I don't know how we've been sleeping on these travesties so damn long. I don't know how. I don't know how we've been sleeping on these tragedies this damn long. I don't understand. But here we go, y'all.
This is a very dark spot in American history that will never be erased.
Wes Johnson was lynched in 1937 in Alabama.
I guess maybe I was an outspoken young boy, very curious, had a lot of questions. Why can't I drink at this water fountain? Why do I have to go through the back door of white people's homes? And we would pass right by nice white schools, but we were not allowed to go to those schools. I had a lot of whys, but no one would give me the answers. Most of the time they would tell me, that's just the way it is, or that's the way it always has been. But my mother told me about this young black guy. His name was Wes Johnson, and I was related to him. And so when it happened, this white guy thought there was a courtship going on between Wes Johnson and this white man's wife. So he was put in jail, and a mob came. They took him, and he was hanged and shot, I believe. My mother's tone was very precautionary. It was very difficult, particularly for young black guys growing up here. And the least thing that you do or is perceived as being out of line, you could very well lose your life. My mother told me the most important thing is keeping the family together. Don't worry about what they say or what they do. If you fight back, the family will be destroyed. And so we had to accept that. But having to accept all this stuff, it caused me to be very bitter because I didn't like the way things operated. This is a time when the civil rights workers being killed over in Mississippi and Alabama as well, prior to the march from Selma to Montgomery. So things were just really getting kicked off here. I was able to take part in the march where we integrated the Star Cafe. And being in a small town like this, everybody knew everybody. They knew who I was and they knew my grandmother. And she received a call once. The words to her were, chastise that grandboy of yours, otherwise he's going to get in trouble. So my grandmother told me, she said, listen, you don't have to stay here, but I got to live here. So rather than to risk her life or my younger siblings, which were girls, I left. Of course, I wandered around for a while and I still wasn't finding the answers I needed. So I knew that the best thing for me to do was to get in college, major in education. By then, I knew that eventually I was going to return to the South, but I had to come back prepared. There was mob violence in New York and Chicago and throughout the North. But in the South, it was so heinous because if you were a black male, you could very easily be lynched. Whether it was an electric chair, a gas chamber, or whether it was with a rope.
Don't you still get the same feeling today? I can feel the eeriness of this story. I can feel the heaviness in his voice of having to relive this story to even tell it to other people. I can feel the very thing that he's suppressing, y'all. And this is sad. If you can't hear that pain in his voice, if you can't hear the victory, if you can't hear the loss, and it's still going on today, if we think we're living through it, man, what about our elders, man? What about our seniors? Imagine how they've suffered their whole life and never, ever, ever saw this get any better. Is that what we're aiming for too? Do we want to be in our silver years and never ever see this get better? How many times have this cycle repeated itself? How many generations of us has just had to live with it and deal with it and die that way? How you doing, Pammy? How you doing, beautiful? You know, how many generations of people who look like us has had to just, I don't even want to say turn the other cheek, man, have just had to act like they didn't notice. You just have to act like you don't notice. There's pain in these stories, y'all. And I'm really going to let this hit home next because I looked up the statistics. And we're not even talking about the lynchings that's going on right now today. We're not talking about the past 10, 15 years. But I'll be addressing that soon. This is just how long it's been going on and how long it's been ruled, you know, that's got to be insatiable. Is insatiable in here? Is insatiable in here? Money Mike, was that you? Oh, there's insatiable. I knew it. I saw that cash out. Thank you, insatiable. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I knew that was you. As soon as I saw the cash app, I was like, insatiable in here? I already knew, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate you, my man. Thank you. But this is how long it's been going on. It's been handled the same way. There's people who have lived through this in the 1950s, 1960s, lost loved ones this way in the earlier 1900s, and they're still watching it happen in the 2000s, in their silver years, ladies and gentlemen. In their silver years. How is this fair to them? But we're supposed to actually care about how they feel. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to actually care about their feelings when they've never taken into account how we feel, not only as individual people when these things happen, but as a core, as a cohesive group of people. This is used for racial terror. This is used to create fear. Are we still afraid? Do we consider this terror now? Do the indigenous black people of today, FBA, is this terror to us? In the era of fuck around and find out, is this terror? This creates fear? We are a more revolutionary group of people. We are a group of people now. If you tell us what we can't do, we'll show you what we can do. So how is this still okay, ladies and gentlemen? I didn't even mean to go this deep in this. Let's finish this. I'm gonna back it up a little bit, and then we'll get into it, y'all. Now we just covered the Anthony Crawford story. Now this is the Wes Johnson story, right? I'm gonna be covering these lynchings. I want to drive this home to everyone. I want to drive this home. This is not by mistake. This is coordinated movement. This is strategic. This is planned. This is planned, ladies and gentlemen. This is what they do. This is what they do. And it's only us that they do it to. And my question is, how the hell are they still able to do it when we know better? How are they still able to do it when we don't have that fear? We don't have that fear. How are they still pulling this off? How is the system still protecting these people? How? The same system that watches us fall, that watches us become slaves, that watches us become oppressed, that watches us die poor. It's the same system that not only promotes but supports this nefarious behavior. These demonic acts, these lynchings, they cover it. They're all a part of the same people. It's the same group of people, different uniforms, different departments, but same demographic of people, ladies and gentlemen. It's a monopoly.
In the South, it was so heinous because if you were a black male, you could very easily be lynched. Whether it was an electric chair, a gas chamber, or whether it was with a rope or a gun, it didn't matter. And so I ended up back here in Alabama, where I got my start, because there was a need to come back to help. It allowed me to be able to give the kids some of the answers that they were searching for that I couldn't get. So to come back here at home to a place where you grew up, where you refused access to this high school, but now you're teaching in that high school, I felt like I had accomplished something. And we are approximately 20 miles from where Wes Johnson was lynched. I don't know where it actually took place, but I often wonder if this is the area it happened. I wonder if this is the tree where it happened, you know. But the people that could have told me more about that are dead now. The era of lynches, it left a bitter taste in the mouths or in the lives of both black and whites throughout this country who did not particularly like what was going on, but many went along just to get along. So this is a very dark spot in American history that will never be erased because people who could have done something about it allowed it to happen.
So are we gonna do something about it, or are we just gonna keep allowing it to happen? Are we going to do something about it, or are we just going to continue to allow this to happen? I'm not gonna make this a long drawn out live, but I do want to draw my point home. Okay? So I looked up the exact number of black lynchings in American history, right? There is no single exact number for black lynchings in American history because formal tracking was never implemented during the peak eras of racial terror. Though documented estimates range from approximately 3,446 to over 4,000 recorded individuals, depending on the specific time frame and archives used. Okay, that's lynching, y'all. That's lynching. All right. Documented figures and time frames. Documented figures and time frames. have to deal with ignorant people, man. And that's why I see when people like Charlie Kirk and these Austin Metcalfs and all these, when these people here are set, another one comes to mind is Sean Grayson. You know, Sean Grayson. I'm if you're not familiar with Sean Grayson, he's the racist 36-year-old YT cop who unalived Sister Sonia Massey. The hot water, remember? When she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and yeah. See, that devil has been found dead in prison. Extensive colon cancer. Extensive case of colon cancer. See how the ancestors avenged that? He was 6 months into a 20-year sentence for unaliving our sister Sonia Massey, and that demon is dead. See, that is why I celebrate and have drinks and roll massive, smokables when these type of people perish because of people like this right here that we're dealing with. This is why I'm numb to it. This is why I'm desensitized. This is why I don't care. This is why I don't care. This is why I don't care. You're on your way out too. You're on your way out too. But this is why I don't care, y'all. All right, so NAACP records from 1882 to 1968, 3,446 black victims out of 4,743 total recorded lynchings, meaning black individuals made up about 72% of the total amount of lynchings, y'all. But they'll tell you to stop playing victim. 72%. Now imagine, 72% must also mean 72% was ruled self-afflicted, never got answers. Family had to deal with the tragedies, the lies. This is where 72%. 72% from 1882 to 1968. Now, let's go from 1877 to 1950. The Equal Justice Initiative documented more than 4,000 racial terror lynchings of black Americans across 12 southern states during the Jim Crow era, later adding nearly 2,000 more confirmed cases during the Reconstruction era immediately following the Civil War. These are all black lives, y'all. You don't hear me saying any cases of white people dangling from trees. You're not hearing that. You're not hearing that. You're hearing us. Us. So you think 72% of us are committing it? You think 72 of us are... Come on, man. Come on, let's be for real. Let's be for real here. Let's be for real. All right? Emerald Pages, Emerald Book Publication, August 15, 2026, wrote a 7-minute piece about this. It's through a civil rights investigation. The alarming rise of black people found hanging, but ruled as, the shoe-asides. Ruled as shoe-asides. Y'all know, a lot of us be in the shoe game, a lot of us shoe-aside, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Y'all peep game now. All right. As public hangings of black people rise, local authorities are dismissing them as shoe-asides within 72 hours, contradicting CDC data, historical trauma, and the pleas of grieving families demanding the truth. And here's 6 right here. And we know of 7 because they're not showing Sister Soraya Henderson out of Tampa, but she was found in St. Pete. But there's 6 right there. There's 6 right there. That's just this year. That's just this year. All right. I think Trey Reed might have been last year, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Here we go. Let's get into this. Get into this article. Across the United States, a deeply unsettling pattern has emerged over the past decade, intensifying in recent years. A rising number of black individuals are being found hanging from trees in public spaces, and in the vast majority of these cases, local authorities are swiftly ruling their deaths as suicides. Suicides. Okay, I gotta make sure YouTube hear me. I gotta make sure the bots hear me. Suicides. However, this official narrative is increasingly at odds with statistical reality, historical context, and the desperate pleas of the victims' families, fueling a crisis of trust and demands for federal intervention. Federal intervention, ladies and gentlemen. We've turned our backs on this for too long. For too long. Independent civil rights organizations and news media have meticulously documented this phenomenon. The comprehensive 2026 report, a Crimson record released by civil rights organization Julian, documented over 70 suspected modern-day lynchings across 7 southern states between 2000 and 2025. The report highlights a recurring pattern of systemic neglect, where local coroners prematurely close cases as shoe-asides or self-afflicted tennis shoes, shoe-aside. All right, y'all peep the lingo. The report highlights a recurring pattern of systemic neglect, where local coroners prematurely close cases as shoe-asides without comprehensive investigations. This data points to a clear and alarming trend, with Mississippi alone accounting for at least 20 of these documented cases over the 25-year period. Over the 25-year period. And we still have things going on with Mississippi right now. You have a statistical contradiction where black people are the least likely demographic to pass away by shoe-aside via hanging, and yet we see the specific rare method being used in public spaces with alarming frequencies. With alarming frequencies. Donald Pratt, what's good? What's good? Long time no see. Long time no see. All right. Independent tracking by groups like BLM Georgia recorded an alarming uptick between March 2025 and August 2026, finding at least 22 black individuals deceased under unusual or suspicious hanging circumstances across the country. During the peak of racial justice protests in the summer of 2020, at least 6 black and brown individuals were found publicly hanged in trees across California, Texas, Georgia, New York, and Oregon within a single month. High-profile cases have become a tragic refrain. In 2024, Denoris Richardson was found in Alabama. In 2025, country witnessed the deaths of Javion McGee in North California and freshman Demar Travian Trey Reed on the campus of Delta State University in Mississippi. By August 2026, the list had grown to include Kyle Basinger of Georgia, 16-year-old Juliana Nizita in North Carolina, Tanea Nicole Miller in Florida, Tasia Fortune in Mississippi, and the other brother's name, I just had it today. I just saw his name today, the other brother in North Carolina. And we can also add Sister Soraya Henderson to that list as well. All right. So that's 7, ladies and gentlemen. The statistical contradiction. The core of the outrage lies in a stark statistical contradiction, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC) and the National Center for Health Statistics. Black Americans are the least likely demographic group to die by suicide using hanging or suffocation. The CDC age adjusted data shows that non Hispanic white individuals die by suicide via suffocation or hanging at a rate of 4.6%, 100,000 more than double the rate for non Hispanic black individuals, which sits at 2.0 per 100,000. Since y'all are always talking per capita, here's your per capita. This data point is central to the argument made by families and civil rights attorneys. The method of death is statistically rare for the demographic most affected, making any public hanging inherently suspicious and demanding a rigorous investigation from the outset. And that's all we've been saying for the longest. That's what we've been saying for the longest. Well, we can tell Jake is still with us. But that's what we've been saying for the longest. When you see these things occur, don't come out and say that you don't suspect any foul play. To find one of us hanging from a tree should be foul play. We're not going to do that. Don't label that self-inflicted. Don't say we don't do this. We don't do this, and it needs to be addressed. It really needs to be addressed, and black people, we're gonna have to be the ones to address it. They can't tell a group of people to stop playing victim when they always make you the victim. All right. The statistical anomaly is compounded by the historical weight of racial terror in America. For generations, public hanging from a tree was the primary method of extrajudicial, the M word, y'all, I can't say that. I'm going to just say extrajudicial unalivings and intimidation used by white supremacists. For many in the black community, the choice of a public tree as the location of a shoe-aside is seen as deeply illogical and unnerving, giving this horrific legacy. The expectation is that the system should treat such deaths with the utmost suspicion, not as an open and shut case of self-harm. And I agree. Statistical rarity. Black Americans are the least likely to die by suicide using hanging, making the frequency of these public cases a glaring anomaly. A glaring anomaly. What's good? How to spell, Mark? How you doing? How you doing? Nah, man. Got off work, showered, man, and knew I had to do this live. So they got this live. I'm laying it down. So I had to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, man. You know, that's all it is. That's all it is. All right. Historical trauma. Public tree hangings carry a deeply traumatic and specific history of racial terror in the U.S., making suicides a less likely explanation for many. Okay. What's good, Donald Pratt? Geographic concentration. The majority of these cases are occurring in the Deep South, mirroring a historical epicenter of lynchings. And here we go, y'all. Here we go. We saw this method used in Mississippi. We saw this method used in Mississippi. They have a method to this. The 72-hour rush to judgment. The 72-hour rush to judgment. When they find a black body hanging, they have a 72-hour rush to judgment set in place, y'all. Despite the statistical and historical red flags, the response from local authorities has been remarkably consistent. Law enforcement and medical examiners, like that piece of crap, Stacey Turner in Mississippi, often rule these deaths as suicides, within 24 to 72 hours of the body being found. This swift conclusion, which civil rights organizations describe as a rush to judgment, is driven by a combination of bureaucratic inertia, resource constraints, and a desire to protect local reputations. This is what we're watching with Sister Tasia Fortune too. There's another one, Sister Tasia Fortune, out of Mississippi. The process often begins with the local coroners, who in many rural southern countries are elected officials, not trained medical professionals. Their standard forensic approach looks for immediate physical evidence, an absence of defensive wounds, a lack of a struggle at the scene, and a rope. If these surface level indicators are present, the file is often closed. So y'all really don't think Nolan Wells had one around his neck? Y'all didn't see that boy stand on the end with that rope, talking about he's getting ready to be towed? That rope was tied to the end of something on the floor of that boat. When he pulled that rope, we saw what looks to be a hand fly up. We know why that medical examiner, Stacy Turner, kept Nolan's throat. We know. We know. If these surface level indicators are present, the file is often closed. This approach frequently leads to the critical investigative steps being skipped. In the case of 16-year-old Juliana Nzita in North Carolina, the medical examiner ruled her death a shoe-aside in 3 days. Shoe, like a tennis shoe, shoe-aside, YouTube. And police closed the case without performing a full autopsy, tracking down her missing cell phone, or even interviewing the person who discovered her body. In the case of Demartravion Trey Reed, an independent forensic investigation later uncovered blunt force trauma and extensive bruising across his body. Evidence that was overlooked by the initial state medical examiner's report. The local entities responsible for these rulings form a specific network: county level elected officials, state medical examiners, and local police chiefs. Because the United States has no centralized federal system investigating sudden deaths, these local entities hold absolute power over how a body is classified. Civil rights organizations like Julian point to 3 specific tiers of local authority driving these controversial rulings. Wow, they get to decide who they classify when you living and how they classify you when you're dead. Ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? Ain't that something? Wow. Number 1, small town and rural county coroners. In most southern states, death investigations are handled by the county coroners. In many rural counties, coroners are elected political officials, not medical doctors or trained forensic scientists. They are frequently local funeral directors, tow truck operators, or business owners who won an election. Because they lack advanced forensic training, they heavily rely on a visual assumption. If they see a body hanging from a rope, they routinely fill it out the death certificate as a tennis shoe aside, shoe aside, right at the scene, when legally prevents a homicide team for treating the areas like an insecure crime scene. Number 2, congested state medical examiners. If a body is sent past the local coroner for an actual autopsy, it goes to the state medical examiner's office. Dr. Stacy Turner, chief medical examiner of Mississippi, is currently at the epicenter of national civil rights protests. Her office ruled the campus hanging death of Demartravion Trey Reed as a, y'all know the S word, self-inflicted. Despite independent findings of blunt force trauma, her office is facing similar intense scrutiny over the August 2026 hanging death of 29-year-old Tasia Fortune in Jackson. Okay, facts, facts. See, we need to know this stuff, man. We need to know this stuff. Thank you, Insatiable. I appreciate that. Number three, local police chiefs and county sheriffs. Once the coroner hints at tennis shoes, shoe aside, okay, police chiefs use public press conferences to lock in the tennis shoe aside narrative before testing is complete. In the case of Juliana Inzita, local police closed the investigation just days after the medical examiner's initial ruling, finalizing it as a tennis shoe aside, without executing basic steps like analyzing her cell phone or interviewing the individual who found her body. On university campuses such as Delta State University, campus police chiefs often control the initial press updates, framing the public message around a student's mental health crisis rather than leaving their door open for foul play. The local loop, sheriff, coroner, state lab, is what civil rights attorneys call the good old boy bureaucracy. Once this loop is complete, it requires a massive expenditure of money, like the family, to pay for independent pathology reports to prove the ruling was wrong. And we're still seeing that right now today. Oh, I hear you, Insatiable. I appreciate you, buddy. I appreciate you. All right. This is sad, man. I guess I'll finish the piece. Why the system defaults to shoe aside. From a bureaucratic standpoint, local coroners look for immediate physical indicators like a lack of defensive wounds or the presence of a note. If no glaring immediate signs of a physical struggle are present on the body, the case is processed as self-inflicted to quickly close local precinct logs, declaring a death a tennis shoe, a shoe-aside, protects a town's public image, shields it from intense media scrutiny, and prevents the massive expenditure of time and money that a hate crime investigation would require. A confirmed hate crime or public lynching instantly damages a city's public image, threatening local businesses, property values, and tourism. Local sheriffs, police chiefs, and politicians are highly incentivized to keep violent crime and hate crime statistics low to project an image of safety and maintain their positions. Civil rights attorneys highlight that local authorities often function as a closed loop. The local sheriff handles the scene. The elected coroner, who is often a political ally of the sheriff, signs the form, and the state lab rubber stamps the file to clear the backlog. Investigating a public hanging as a potential racially motivated unaliving forces local departments to coordinate the federal entities, such as the FBI Civil Rights Division or the Department of Justice, DOJ. Federal intervention subjects the local police department to intense external audits, rigorous background checks, and an unprecedented level of natural oversight, which local law enforcement actively resists. This creates a devastating reality for the families of the victims. In almost every highly publicized case, the victims' families adamantly state that their loved ones showed zero signs of depression, were actively making plans for the future, or were dynamic individuals with no history of mental illness. The family of Javion McGee fiercely contested the state's tennis shoes, shoe aside ruling, demanding transparency into the timeline of his death. For them, the loss of a loved one is compounded by a legal system that seems designed to close the case rather than pursue justice, leaving them to hire independent attorneys and fight the most basic investigative steps to be taken. Unless civil rights attorneys like Ben Crump or intense public protests force the state general or the FBI Civil Rights Division to intervene, these cases are rarely investigated as potential hate crimes or homicides, y'all. They have the blueprint as well as the permission, y'all, to take us out as long as they do it the right way. And the right way seems to be by a rope and a tree. It seems to be covered. Seems to be covered. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I thank y'all for joining me. Y'all please stay vigilant, and stay vigilant in your research. Be aware of your surroundings, ladies and gentlemen. Know what you're up against, who you're up against. Okay? At all times. Thank you for joining me. Y'all have a great night. Please hype this live, hit the subscribe button, share this video, y'all. Get the word out. We have got to stay safe. These lynchings are absolutely no mistake. Absolutely no mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Good night to all. Rest in power so you can arise empowered. Ashe.